Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on Wednesday, December 20th. It's also a great pleasure to be joined here in our studio by Peter Gaiotti, who is the state chaplain of the Vermont VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars. He's also the post commander of the Harned-Fowler Post 6471 in Manchester, Vermont, and is also the junior vice commander for District 1 of the Vermont VFW. Mr. Gaiotti, welcome to GNAT.
Good morning.
Great to have you here. We have a really important subject to talk about in a moment or two, but just to kind of get us started here, I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about how things are going at the Harned-Fowler Post in Manchester and the VFW.
Things are going good. We've had a few issues and stuff like that, but we try to work things out. Not everybody gets along.
I'm shocked to hear that.
Yeah. No, it's a really good post. It really is. I've been there. I came back in '05, and I think Bill Weeks signed me up, and I think it was in '06. I'm pretty sure it was '06.
All right. So you're one of the old timers then.
One of the old timers now, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, way to go.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, are you able to kind of attract new members in, younger veterans who might have served in Iraq or Afghanistan?
Actually, we are.
Are they joining the post?
Yeah, we are. And our quartermaster, Tom Jackson, takes care of most of the memberships and like that, but I'm always recruiting. Matter of fact, I just got another pin from National, says I'm doing a good job and keep it up. And
well, that's good to hear. So tell us about what your service was in the military. You were in the Navy, is it?
Navy Seabees.
Okay.
Yep.
And you served in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Just Iraq, not Afghanistan. I was supposed to go to Afghanistan, but they ended up switching me around with another guy.
Okay.
Because I was a heavy equipment operator, and he was a heavy equipment operator and mechanic. I mean, I got some mechanic skills, but not like him. So they sent him to Afghanistan and me to Iraq.
All right. Well, it must have been an interesting time, and I'd like to hear more about that in a minute or two. But I guess let me just kind of dive into the subject. I guess we're going to talk mostly about today. And when I was up at the Harned-Fowler Post on Veterans Day to sort of cover that event. You told me a story about an experience you had that, quite frankly, has lingered on in my memory ever since that day, November 11th. I wonder if you could tell us about that.
Yeah, it happened in March of '21. I had a high blood pressure, low sugar crash, which made me go cuckoo, basically, out of my head. And I was at my son's, they were having a party for him, going away party for him, because he was going to go to Iraq. And everything triggered. So I just came apart at the seams, and then I left, went to one of my old favorite hunting spots and pulled out my .40 caliber handgun, racked it, put it up my head, in my mouth, pulled the trigger. Nothing happened.
It was
and I thought in the confusion maybe I didn't rack it. So I racked it and the bullet went flying by my head and slid another one in the chamber. And then I had a few seconds or minutes to think about what's going on, and all of a sudden faces like my grandchildren, my wife, everybody start popping in my head like, "Pop, what are you doing? What are you doing, Pop?" So I said, I need help, so I need to go someplace. So, of course, my wife has already called, she already called the state police, and they said, well, there's nothing we can really do unless, so they were looking for me. I had a trooper call me, but he didn't leave. He was a restricted number, so I tried to call him back. I'm like, this is pointless. So half of me was going, end yourself, end your life, end your life. And I know that was coming from the devil. And my other half was fighting, saying, no, 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 no. You need to go get help. So my wife actually called the VA. The VA said, well, if you can get him to come, bring him over. So she said, well, you're going to go see the doctor over the VA for a checkup. So I went over and they checked everything out. And then they're like, I see these two psychiatrists coming at me. And they sat down. They said, Mr. Gaiotti, this is strictly volunteer. You can leave at any time. I said, I don't think so, because my ride just left. My wife, we live 65 miles from White River. So I said, I'm not walking in cold weather and snow. So I went into what they call the ground East program at the VA over in White River. And 4 days later, I came out a different man.
So what, did they talk to you about kind of what led you there?
Right. They couldn't believe that by the time we got done with it, they're like, we can't believe that you should be in here. But I believe the Lord had me there to talk to the guys that were experiencing the same thing or going through the same thing. I met a guy that was on heroin. He was a veteran in Afghanistan 3 times. And he just said he'd been hooked on it. You know, and I said, so what's going on? He said, well, the VA is trying to push more drugs on me. He says, I'm trying to get out of it. So we prayed. He gave his life to the Lord, and things changed. And then when they were going in, but we're prescribing you these meds, he said, I don't want them. He said, I don't want to be a junkie for the rest of my life. You know, whether here or on the streets. So they said, okay, we'll put you through different therapeutic measures. And then another guy was, his name was Ed Sullivan. I'll always remember his name. He was a
hard to forget
devout atheist, but it turned out that he had some issues growing up as a child, abused by his parents. So it was like, oh, you know, help him through it. So he was trying to get me to he was trying to get me to stumble in my faith, but my faith never stumbled. But yet it made him question his why he's an atheist. It made him question. So he says, he said, the hard part is, what do I do now? And I said, well, do the right thing. Do the right thing. But, you know, and I knew the Lord had me there for that reason, just to talk to these people, let them know, you know, because they were going through some pretty tough stuff. And then I told them, you know, I put my 40 in my mouth, pulled the trigger, and I'm here talking to you now. So something God wanted me to do, to say something to you. So yeah, that was a dark hour for me though, that time, in my Jeep, and just everything was crashing down around me.
So, I mean, we hear a lot about veterans who've served in the military in combat situations, you know, struggling after their services ended. What is it about the memory of, particularly if you're in a combat situation and have seen right up close, you know, hard death, destruction, that makes taking your own life seem like a sensible way to go?
Yeah. Well, I had an incident in Iraq where I was on convoy and we got our convoy, they shot an RPG rocket at our convoy. We swerved, the first vehicle swerved and missed, it hit an IED, which blew up. My vehicle was second truck, I can't tell you what I was carrying, but my second truck, my A driver jumped out, hooked the chain, and we just dragged the wreckage behind us to what we thought was going to be a safe area. Corpsman comes out of another vehicle and he jumps up on top, grabs a gunner on top. He said, Gaiotti, give me your flak, which was our medical pack. He never gave it up, but I threw it up to him. And he says, do something for the driver of the Humvee, which was on fire. And he says, can you get him out? And I said, sure. I opened the door and I pulled him out, but all I had was from his shoulders up. Basically, everything else was just dangling. And he survived for 12 minutes.
So those sorts of experiences I could imagine kind of play on in your head.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Years
it took
afterwards.
me 15 years of therapy before I could actually talk about the situation. You know, it wasn't, you know, we were there doing our jobs. He was there doing his job. He was a young Marine. But just seeing, you know, the devastation right there and seeing, you know, I was a firefighter and rescue, fire and rescue for 20-something odd years before this occasion happened. So it's like, what do? You're sitting there with a guy that's, you know, only partially there, that's still alive calling out for his mom. So I said to the coroner, he said, just talk to him. So I said, yes, son, I got you. I'm right here, you know, Dad's got you, you know. So I was a father. I was 42 years old. He was 19. So just helped him get through that little bit apart, and then he was gone.
Mm. So that sounds like, is that like post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD was what we hear a lot about?
Yeah, that is. It's trying to deal with the trauma that you went through. And it's quite an animal. It takes a lot of therapy with the psychologist, psychiatrist. Psychiatrist try to push drugs on you and you say, no, no, no. Mm. Psychologist doesn't. You're more freely to, you know, speak really how they pull your feelings out of you and get you to see the light. That I was in that situation, but I was under orders. So somebody up top had the answer for that, not me. I was just there to help in that situation.
You know, it's interesting. You know, thinking back to when I was a kid in the 1950s, there were a lot of veterans from World War II, obviously living in the neighborhood where we lived. And yet I don't remember ever hearing any stories about what they went through.
Right.
The whole mantra of the time was, well, you know, we don't talk about it.
Right, that's what my dad came back from Korea, and they told him same way, you don't talk about what you saw.
And I often thought, you know, that really was not good advice, if that's what they got, or maybe that was the culture at the time.
It was a culture at the time.
But I can only imagine there must have been hundreds of thousands of servicemen who went through, you know, situations kind of similar to what you're describing, and we're just stuffing
4 million guys went through World War II in 4 years. You know, that's a lot of guys to see horror.
Yeah.
And that's way beyond what, you know, ours was either we were shot at by rockets from 17 miles away or mortared. You really never saw, unless you were going through a town, you never really saw the targets that you were shooting at.
Mm. So I guess, you know, the main message today, you know, is that help is available for those who may find themselves in a similar place that you did.
Right. The VA has a very good program for PTSD, and there's other, you know, mental health agencies out there that could help. Not sure what their names are, but the VFW helps with it. We have service officers that can get guys on the right tracks. You know, a lot of the young guys come back and they don't know what to do. Mm. So our service officers reach out to them and get them and help them out.
So some veteran who's struggling, like it's not like they don't have any recourse to go and get help. Is that help like free? I mean, there's no cost involved, is it?
No cost.
Okay, yeah.
And it's any veteran, you know, they don't have to be a member of the VFW to get the help. I mean, our service officer, you know, is right there. Or any of my post members. You know, a lot of them are, we still have a few, let's see, my dad's 91, he's Korean War. And then we have 1 or 2, maybe 3 World War II vets that are still around in their 90s, high 90s. Mm. It's amazing. But they'll tell you just the way vets open up to vets. They'll say, hey, this is what happened to me. Mm. But when a civilian person asks, you know, what's it all about? It's hard to explain because the camaraderies with the brotherhood, brother and sisterhood of the military.
Yeah, you instinctively you can relate immediately.
Yeah, you can relate.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Well, I've often found it kind of interesting that it seems like, I've read this anyway, talked to a few veterans as well about this, is that when you leave the military and come back into civilian life, it's a really hard adjustment, even if you might have gone through some tough situations and struggled with this or that. But there's like you said, camaraderie and a unit that you belong to, and everybody was sharing that experience. And so you did have people you could go to and say, boy, I'm not feeling great about this or whatever, but and they understand just instinctively without having to go through a big long explanation.
Yeah, we understand.
But that transition to civilian life, I would imagine,
it's hard for a lot of, especially young guys coming back. All the guys. What's hard now is what transpired with Afghanistan, with us pulling out and leaving everything for the Taliban to use, and now all our weapons and all the stuff that was left there is scattered around the world to terrorist organizations. And a lot of guys are like, we were over there 20 years for what?
Yeah, I imagine that must be a difficult thing to process. I mean, because
it's kind of like Vietnam. We were over there for what, 15 years for what?
Yeah,
Nothing.
right. In the end,
the rubber factories, Goodyear, Michelin, and all the other.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting after when was it, August of 21, when Kabul was falling, and all those people were cramming into the airport trying to get the last plane out or whatever.
Desperation where they're riding on the wheels.
I imagine it must have been hard for a lot of servicemen who and women who would work with some of these folks as they were translators or contractors of some sort, and they weren't able to get them out. I mean, I suppose it was a tough situation if the word had been spread that, hey, we're leaving as of a certain date, and if you want to get out, come to the U.S. Embassy right now so we'll get your papers. I mean, I imagine that would have been a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
It's kind of like Vietnam when they pulled out of Vietnam.
Yeah.
Same way.
You all remember the last helicopter leaving off the roof of the embassy in Saigon there.
In Saigon, yeah. It's basically the same way.
Another thing I wonder if you mentioned there's someone who was struggling with heroin or opioid addiction or not wanting to fall down that rabbit hole too far. And there's a lot of, I think, stigma attached to someone who winds up in that place, which I think is a very unfortunate attitude to take towards someone who finds themselves in that. Do you think there's a stigma attached to service members who struggle with PTSD? Or do you feel like there's a certain amount of sympathy that the general public has towards that?
That's a tough question. I think it's both ways. There's some sympathy, and then there's like, yeah, they're drug dealers, they're drug addicts, they'll always be drug addicts and never change. But that's not, you got to reach inside and grab the person out of the problem. And that's what I believe more military guys do, is we see a buddy that's in trouble, we want to help get him out of there. So, and never leave your buddy behind.
Right. Well, you were chaplain when you were over in Iraq?
No, I wasn't. No, I was a heavy equipment operator for Navy Seabees.
So what led you down the road to becoming a chaplain?
I don't, I became the chaplain in the post. Well, the guy said, you seem more spiritual than the rest of us. So they voted me in as chaplain at the post. And I was chaplain for a couple of years. I think it was more that Donnie Sherbanow, who was my predecessor as the chaplain, was there. He'd been there since the post since 1947, I think, I believe it was when he joined. And he was World War II. He served under General MacArthur on his staff. He was one of his typewriter guys. So yeah, he had quite a history. Donnie did, and young people today don't even realize, what some of these guys, who they were, what they did. But Donnie took the chaplain position very seriously. He had it memorized.
So do you have to go through some kind of certification process to that, or you
Not
just sort of
really.
get named the chaplain?
You
And
just become chaplain. Me right now, let's see, I start in January. I'll be going to taking online classes for the chaplaincy so that I can get my either ordained or certified. No, I believe, help where you can help.
Right.
Even at my age, still learning old dog learning new tricks. So the saying's not true. Old dogs can learn new tricks.
So you're also the state chaplain, then, as we
I am.
learned at the start here. Does that mean you have to travel around the state and be involved in other districts?
I
or
could.
posts?
I mean, I could. But what I do is I usually have the either the post quartermasters or the post chaplains send me a list of who's I'm supposed to record all our deceased members. And then we do a big banner when we have our convention. All the guys, we honor the guys and gals that have served from the VFW, from our post. Different posts around. There's 20 posts in the state. So my job is to make sure I get all the info and have it all ready for convention. I had a few issues that nobody was sending me anything. and then I had a post, let's see, she was a district quartermaster sent me all the deceased members that he's had so far. I'm like, wow, and then I know we have a few here in our post here in Manchester. But right now, I think it sits at 32,
Okay.
which is a lot.
Yeah.
It's, and you're losing this many, and you're only getting this. Got a bunch over here that are going out, and very few that are coming in. But there's more people that qualify for.
Do you get any kind of list from the Army or the Pentagon or whatever saying here are the soon-to-be veterans that are living in your area and contact information for them so you can go out, or is it just up to the individual vet to kind of reach out to you guys, or how does?
Yeah, they usually reach out to us, but depends on what area I'm in. And if I see somebody and you hear them talking the lingo, and then you say, hey, by the way, you part of the VFW? No. Yes or no, some guys say, yeah, but yeah, I got some new, actually one guy that I've been trying to get in for 4 or 5 years. I finally gave up because the VFW wouldn't let him in. So then I was going through my changing briefcases, and then I found his application, so I threw it on Tom's desk, quartermaster, and I said, see if you can get this guy in. So now he's a member.
All right.
It's like, wow. He said, oh yeah, he said the Navy's changed the VFW's changed their policy of who qualification policies.
Well, we're going to have to run in a minute or two, but here I just wanted to kind of circle back to, again, the central question of this conversation today is like, a veteran who feels like, the darkness creeping in and getting all kinds of unhealthy thoughts. What should they do first? Should pick up the phone and do they call? Who do they call?
The 800 number.
And there's one on the website, I guess you could just.
Yep, there's an 800 number. They changed it because when I called, I got put on hold. And I said, screw that. Hung up,
Sure.
and that's when so them knowing that, I told them right out,
That's amazing. I think that could make the difference.
it's like, you need to change it. You should, have it so it goes to another, either operator or a live voice that tells them, hey, just stay on the line, we're right here. So now when you call it, it says, press this button or press that. So it keeping you occupied on what you need to do. And hopefully you guys use it.
Because when I was doing a little research for this conversation, I see that there's also some pre-written messages that you could text, I guess, somewhere saying, hey, you know, I need to talk to somebody.
Right.
You know, I'm having a tough time. And if you can't, just pick up the phone and talk to somebody.
And you can always,
I can be reached at this number.
and you can always reach out to your buddies because, you know, if you call me, I don't care what time of the night, morning, whatever.
Yeah.
You call me and say, hey, I'm hurting, this is what's going on. And I'll be right there.
All right.
You know,
All right.
At least get them on, you know, talk to them while they're getting on the horn to help.
Because that's probably the critical moment, you know, right?
It
I
is.
mean, when
It
someone's
is.
ready to make that call, that's when someone's got to be there.
Right.
You
It's
can't put that
You know,
off.
and we do, and that's why we do the buddy checks,
Yeah.
to make sure everybody's, you know, if you're not doing good, then you need to, and we know, you know, and you can tell by somebody's voice, oh, I'm fine, yeah, you're not, what's going on? And then a lot of times they'll open up and let you know, and then you say, hey, you know, these are your options, you know, option number 4 is not an option. Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, but option number 4 is not an option, you know, where you pull a gun and pop yourself. We have guys that, you know, that can help. And that's, I guess that's my biggest message is there are people that will help. But you gotta make the call.
Yeah.
If you don't make the call, you know, you could end up as a statistic for the birth date and the expiration date, and we don't want that.
And that's a sign of strength, too, to be able to make that call.
Make the call.
It's not like a sign of weakness or something like that.
And just know you got brothers out there, brothers and sisters who've been through the same, that know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
Because I've been there.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, I tell you, every time I think about that story you told me there at Veterans Day, it just gives me the chills. But I'm grateful that somebody was looking after you.
I am too.
And really grateful that you were able to come here today to share that story, because I'm sure there'll be folks watching that will hopefully pick up the phone or do whatever
Right.
they need to do
Call.
to kind of get out of that place that nobody wants to go to.
Right.
Well, okay. Well, Peter Gaiotti, thank you again for your time and
you're
for
welcome.
coming down here. Really appreciate it.
You're
This
welcome,
is
sir.
probably one of the most important conversations we're going to have. And thank you again. So thanks to all of you who've been with us today. We'll see you again in the new year.